Sketch comedy every Thursday on the Top Hat Balloon Show. Subscribe now.
In this episode of Another Zelda podcast, David and Kate visit the Video Game Summit 2019 and meet up with Celeste Roberts and Lizzi Neelsen to discuss water dungeons.
Hello and welcome to Another Zelda podcast. I am David Geisler, your co-host, and today I am joined with my co-host, Kate. Hey, Kate, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We are here. We are live at the Video Game Summit 2019.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah. And we have some guests with us who just introduced themselves, of course. Lizzi, how are you?
I'm so great. How are you?
Lizzi Neelsen is joining us. Now, our listeners might be a bit familiar with you from our favorite shrines episode and also our top 10 favorite shrine quests episode.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Kate, Lizzi, as you know, was the first time that we had more than two voices on the show just a couple episodes ago. But now it's super special. Not only is it a live episode, a live stream episode, recorded or filmed at a live place, we were also able to be joined by Celeste Roberts. Celeste, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Clapping.
I'm so excited.
Silent clapping.
Four voices on the show. It's going to be intense. I'm going to have to really make sure to not interrupt anybody.
Oh, no.
So, Celeste, let's introduce you to our audience just a little bit. I'll say quickly that you operate as the editor of our blogs, and so I think some people are familiar with you that way. What else?
Well, I actually found out about podcasts around the time I discovered your podcast. Yeah, so you were one of the first podcasts I ever listened to.
And
you're on it.
And I'm on.
How about that? Soon you're going to be running the world, I'm pretty sure.
Work.
Yeah.
I think that's how podcasts work.
Yeah.
Well, when you're a super fan like you were, Celeste, if I may, we were always getting comments from you and feedback, and you were so supportive of the show. And then it just led to a project. And then
And you're like, please leave us alone. And you're like, no, I'm going to keep doing this stuff. And we're like, fine, you can work for us. That's pretty much how it went, right, Dave?
It's pretty close. Honestly, to that point, there are days where I'm a little bit buried in post-production or something like that. And Celeste is like, okay, I'm thinking this, and then we can do this, like for the blogs and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm giving her enough attention. But Celeste, so you came into Chicago from Louisiana.
Yeah.
Kind of New Orleans.
About an hour away, Thibodeau-Houma area.
Mm-hmm. You're here with your husband, Timmy. I did tweet out a picture of a couple days ago when we were able to get together, the three of us. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you've kind of turned this into a little bit of a vacation, if I may.
I love it. It's my first time in Chicago, first time out in the Midwest, and it's beautiful.
I picked a good time to come out here. Like, it's only warm for like 5 days. So
yeah, we have summer for like a week. It's true.
Yep, that is amazing.
And this is
good job.
This is that week. So today I should talk. We're not going to do listener feedback or anything. I just want to get right into it because we got enough going on in this episode.
Yep.
But today we are talking, of course, about water dungeons. And I really almost titled the episode Water Temples because it's easy to do that because of the infamous Water Temple. But technically it's Water Dungeons if we're going by our format here.
Yep. Dun, dun, dun. The one that makes everyone so mad.
Yeah.
The ones that make everyone so mad, I guess. Possibly more than one.
I think I'm going to go around and ask everybody what makes a water dungeon for them. But when we knew we were going to be able to do a show like this and have many voices on the show and have it be kind of a live show like this, I felt like water dungeons was a big enough topic that it could live in an episode like this. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, because you pretty much in any game, you're going to have something earth or foresty kind of related, and then you have your water related one, and then you have like a fire related one.
Yeah, there's always a lot of like it's green, red, blue oftentimes, right as you go down the line.
Exactly.
Lizzi, how do you feel about water dungeons in general?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like I only have the infamous ones that stand out in my mind. But I don't know. It's hard for me to answer before like I just give everything away, but I'm honestly generally fine on them.
In general,
I don't hate them as much as maybe some people do.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's really interesting mechanics in them.
I just realized something, if I may. I just realized something. When we had our favorite shrines episode, which was just you and I, about this time last year, many of the shrines that you and I liked were for similar reasons. We liked the big shrines that were massive puzzles, and you really had to like think out of the context and stuff like that.
Right.
And to that point, I think water dungeons can get like that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If I may speak for myself, which is how it works, I often get excited to go into a water dungeon, like any Zelda game. Like, all right, here we go, let's get into it. And somewhere about halfway through, you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. What's it like for you, Kate?
Well, I think going into the games, I always had like an ingrained fear of them because I don't know, like if you played Sonic the Hedgehog, you just imagine the drowning and the scary music that starts happening when you're starting to drown, and anything that involves like a time limit or, you know, oh, I can't breathe underwater, like Super Mario 64 or something like that, where you have only so much time that you can be underwater or diving. I would instantly get anxious. I don't like that. So I'm sure when I first came to a water temple in Ocarina of Time, I was like, oh no, and then, oh wait, no, I don't have to worry about that in this game. Thank God. So, and you really don't have to deal with that mechanic in the Zelda games.
Unless you play Ocarina of Time wrong, like I did on our episode.
Wrong, like you did, exactly. Not wrong, but super challenge mode.
So I was playing through the water temple with only 1 minute timers.
Oh, that sounds very difficult.
Luckily, you don't have to do that.
Then I figured it out anyway.
So I think they're a cooler version of a water-related level or water-themed level for that reason, because you don't have that pressure and you get to focus on other things like the water level rising or pushing your lily pad or doing whatever you need to do. And in going through these particular ones that we're going to be talking about, I realized that I actually like a lot of the bosses in the water temple.
Cool.
So I'm like, you know, for as frustrating as the temples themselves can be, I really like the bosses. They're usually something completely different because they're in water or involved with water, and it's just there's usually something interesting or cool about them. And I was like, oh yeah, I like that one. Oh yeah, I like that one. Oh yeah, I like that one.
That's cool.
So
I didn't think about that.
They tend to have a cool ending.
I do think you hit a good point there. I think if there might be a general statement, and we'll see if this lines up with Celeste's thoughts on water temples, dungeons, but that's the two elements, isn't it? It's the macro puzzle where you have to be remembering things from other rooms to other rooms to other rooms. And then there's the potential anxiety time level thing of sometimes that there's or at least the implied or inferred, I can't be underwater for too long thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yep.
So Celeste, what is it like for you? Wait, let me ask it this way. When we invited you to come on the show, we knew you were coming and we hadn't quite picked the topic yet. I had a few ideas. Pardon me. And I told you it was going to be water dungeons. How'd you feel about that?
Pretty excited because I approach dungeons and that I'm very interested in the aesthetic of the dungeons and the music. I'm taking that all in. I'm a tourist in the dungeons.
I like this.
I know, it's kind of strange, but as I go into it, I get frustrated if I can't remember what door does this key belong to or how's this enemy going to be. But I just love taking it in, like I'm exploring this newfound land almost.
They do often have cool music or just like they
really
seem
good
more
point.
peaceful, maybe
Much more
than the other
peaceful.
ones. You're not like, you don't have heat waves in the air. You don't feel like uncomfortable. It's kind of more like, oh, I can just kind of go swimming if I want.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And on some of the later ones, like the Twilight Princess stuff, there's a lot of shimmer effects that start happening. And they are kind of cool to be in. You're absolutely right.
And in a way, like you almost slow down in water temples, which again, can sometimes lead to frustrations, but just because you can't go as fast swimming in water, having to like float down, it's like, it kind of forces you to just slow down, take in the temple.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Shimmers.
I remember a lot of just like watching Link kick his
just-
legs and just kind of
There's that-
float back up.
Yep.
Yeah,
I wonder, they say that they motion captured a lot of his movements. I wonder, like, who did that? Was it
the
the person
person in the
hanging from a
pool?
bar? Am I getting it right?
Am I swimming? It was a dog. It was like a dog's legs doing the doggy paddle underwater.
mhm.
They just turned it into Link's legs.
So what water dungeon should we start with? I don't want to do Ocarina first. Let's save that for after
Okay.
the break. Oh, I don't think we're going to be taking a break because it's a live stream, but let's save it for later. What do you think we should start with first?
Let's go with the Lake Bed Temple in Twilight Princess.
I was going to say Twilight.
Shall we do that?
I love it.
Because this is probably the other one that I remember the most. When I was going back through them and doing research for this episode, I was like, oh yeah, the spinning staircase.
I love the spinning stairs, if I may.
I think I went back and forth of really liking it and really hating it. Just because I would get lost in all the directions that it could go or all the different, the water's going down the stairs, now it's not going down the stairs, or it wasn't before and now it is, and now I can turn it to this direction where I couldn't do that before, or if I did do that before, it won't go to the same place in the same kind of way. And it was just sometimes too much.
Well, when a water dungeon is at its best is when the physics of the water is part of the puzzle. So like just rotating stairs in Twilight Princess, that could be executed with a magical energy chain. It could be anything. But when you're bringing in the physics of, it only goes down, water doesn't go up, or the water dungeon, if I may just real quick jump over to Ocarina, is like, you're filling this volume that you can navigate in. I think that is when water dungeons are their best. And I do remember in the Twilight Princess one, at first I thought, this is essentially on-off switches, which it kind of is, but at least there is a bit of a water logic to it.
Yeah.
Any thoughts over here from Celeste and Lizzie?
So for the Lakebed Temple, I just remember it's been about 12 years since I've played fully through Twilight Princess, but I remember loving how the iron boots could be used with the magnetism in the caves. They had the crystals at the top, at the ceiling, and his boots, and he would be hanging upside down, and it was just beautiful.
Is that in the water dungeon? It's definitely in the fire dungeon.
I remember
They probably because water comes after.
It's like an underwater cavern, from what I
see.
remember.
Oh yeah.
Wow, I forgot about it entirely.
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool because you would take off the boots, you'd fall, you put them back on, suddenly he's back up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. How about you, Lizzie, for Twilight
I have to
Princess?
be honest, I don't remember. I never finished Twilight Princess because
You can just get on out of here.
You may leave
that
now.
is like number one on my list to go back and replay and finish. So I don't remember the water. I don't know if I even got to the Lakebed Temple because it was way back when I was in college when the game first came out. So I played over winter break, and then when classes started, I'm really high strung. So I'm like, I don't have time for fun. So I never
see.
finished
No fun for me.
Yeah.
I see.
We should go back and visit it.
How do you feel about A Link to the Past?
I mean, I love the Link to the Past. And
There it is.
don't worry, we'll get
Lines
to
are drawn.
I know.
I'm just joking, I'm
the
joking.
lines are drawn. Still leave, Lizzie.
No, this is great.
Right.
Because when we get to the Link to the Past stuff,
Yeah.
Kate and I will be less helpful.
Great.
Yep.
Oh, that's when I'm going to shine. So
That
I'll
sounds
just sit
good.
here until... No, I'm just kidding.
So in the Twilight Princess water
Yeah.
dungeon, I know you have a bunch of notes here. Do you have a little bit more information about
Yeah. So I like that you received the claw shot in that particular
it? Which is common with
Temple.
water dungeons.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's also one of my favorite items to use, or it's not really, it could be used as a weapon, can be, but that's one of my favorite things just to get in the game. I always feel like I can do so much more when I get that. So I think that's a big part of why I like this particular one, is because you get something awesome in it. You don't always get something awesome in every dungeon, as you know. And then for the bosses, you have the Deku Toad mini boss, which is gross. I don't really like any kind of frog or toad related.
And it's
boss.
Deku based? I don't remember this.
Well, that's what it's
It's
called.
like a plant?
It's not, though. So there's actually something
Celeste
on
is hitting the internet.
when I was doing the research for this. I was reading on like the wiki or something that it may be mistranslated,
Oh, I see.
and they just put Deku Toad for whatever reason.
Okay.
But it's like translated as Big Toad or something
Okay.
like that, basically. And then the actual main boss is Morpheal. And so this one is kind of a mix to me of cool looking, like you're underwater, you're swimming around, it's totally different. But then you have the boring, like, shoot the eye on the back of its head for whatever reason, kind of like, wah wah, you know. It's a cool way to do it, but then it's kind of a standard hit the target.
You're absolutely
kind of
right.
thing.
The battle is epic in presentation.
Yes.
It's epic. I remember when I first played it, I was like, ooh, this feels like Shadow of the Colossus light. But when you really look at the mechanics, it's not like Shadow Colossus at all. You just really hook to one thing and
then
he
smash
hangs
your
on
sword in
Right.
it.
and you smash your sword.
Yeah.
It feels a bit like you're on this huge beast and you know what I mean?
Yep.
But it is
Oh,
cool
wow.
and epic when you play it.
It
Yeah,
is
it feels
gross.
like you sink and sink and
gross?
sink and sink and sink
Gross. I
forever.
just
Oh,
Googled the
Morpheal?
thing. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's like
I had
a
to see it, and it's
just a big
yeah,
fish,
it's pretty
no?
gross.
a lion eel
Oh, yeah.
fishy gross thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, where it has its own mouth and then the weird round mouth inside it.
Huge tongue.
That sounds nice.
Gross.
Multiple mouths with that fish.
I think that
So chatty.
I had one other note. Flipping pages here. So what you were saying about the aesthetics of the different water dungeons that you appreciate. I guess at one point, if you talk to Midna in the water temple, she talks about how it's beautiful. Oh, this is beautiful. I really like the aesthetics. She probably doesn't say aesthetics, but she's like, oh, this place is so nice and pretty. And then eventually she gets frustrated with how complicated it is. And I was reading this on the wiki too, how that's probably a nod to the Ocarina
You chat with her in the beginning, but after you
Several.
play for a while, if you chat with her again, she makes a comment.
That's what I read, and I don't.
I'm sure she does.
I didn't talk to her a lot because she quite often didn't have very useful things to say.
Right.
So I didn't use that a lot. And when I go back and play, I should do that more to see kind of what these things are, because I didn't even know this. And then I read that. I was like, well, that's cool. And it may be like a little wink wink to, oh, the water temple in Ocarina is pretty cool looking. This is cool. No, it sucks. I'm so mad. It's so complicated.
I did, as I was looking for the fish here, Celeste, I did come across those magnet things. You're absolutely right. I totally remember now. Super awesome. And I also remembered that the water rendering, like whatever engine was used on GameCube games to render water, was amazing. I don't know what was in the chips for the GameCube, but I do remember water always looked fantastic. Even like Star Fox Adventures water even looked pretty good. Like water always looked really good on GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the first time for me where the water felt wet, felt like real water. The splashes felt right. I found myself accidentally, back when we played it about a year ago.
Yep.
Accidentally avoiding water as if you would in real life. To like, oh, I don't want to get my shoes wet, but in a video game it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I remember the water feeling very real. I thought that was super cool.
Cool. So maybe let's move on to another one.
Well, do we want to? Well, I feel like we shouldn't talk about Majora's Mask Great Bay Temple until after Ocarina, so maybe that's the second one, because they kind of piggyback off each other.
Sure.
Okay. Where should we go
Celeste,
next?
what do you want to pick?
Yeah.
How about Skyward Swords,
The
the ancient cistern?
Ooh.
Okay, cool. So yeah,
I
when
like
we were
that
looking at some
one.
of our pre-show notes, there was a bit of not debate. We all agreed, yes, that would be the water dungeon. But what makes it a water dungeon for you?
It's the aesthetics. It has lotus flowers. It has lily pads. It reminds me of Thailand. I've never been to Thailand, but just the pictures I've seen. And I think the boss, Kalaktos, he was influenced by a Buddhist story called the Spider's Thread.
Yeah, I was reading that too, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's very peaceful. That whole area is beautiful with the pillars, the music.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Also, I don't know if it's hookshot, but you're doing like that whippy thing in that one, isn't
Yes.
that right? Going from place to
Yes,
place. Do you
you-
get that in that dungeon? I can't recall.
I think you have to fight Kalaktos
to get it.
with that
Oh,
whip.
with it, because you pull the arms, his arms
Yeah.
up.
Yep.
Yeah, that
And
is
you
cool.
have to hit him with his own weapon.
Yes. Yeah, which was a carryover from like Wind Waker and stuff when they
Yeah.
just started playing around with you taking other
Is Wind
people's
Waker
weapons.
is Wind Waker just its own water dungeon? The whole game.
Well, you know, that's interesting. It's interesting because in Wind Waker, we've talked about this in our Wind Waker episode, Kate. The quote unquote water dungeon, or what feels like would be the water dungeon if you're doing forest, fire, water. That water dungeon is destroyed, and you really just go talk to the big fish, Jaboon.
Yeah.
You go back to Outset Island,
Oh.
and there's a lot of theories that was maybe one of the dungeons that was cut. I don't know, whatever. But it's odd that you just go to a broken island and then go find the fish at a place that's already been built.
And he's like, "Here's your thing. Bye."
Yeah.
Okay.
But you said, and maybe we're going to jump over, but we should come back to Skyward Sword. But like, well, no. We'll save Wind Waker's, what we think Wind Waker's water dungeon is.
Yes.
So let's go back to Skyward Sword.
Yeah, I liked that big giant area. It felt like a cool place you could explore and not be like super rushed into it. It wasn't impossible to navigate. There were enemies in there, but they're not just like attacking you like crazy.
Yeah,
You
just
can
kinda
kind
chill.
of hang out and go on the. Although I think the lotus or whatever, the lily pads, whatever they are, like flip over, right?
Yeah, I
and they
think
can
they
hurt
flip.
you that way. So nothing is truly safe.
Right, that's right.
But yeah, and then you have the other part, which is like the underworld, and that's not really water, but it's some kind of like cloud or goo or something like that. So it's kind of like a halvesies water dungeon in a way, but that's
Does
the
the
one that I
water
would
go up
consider.
or down in that one? I don't know if it does.
Oh gosh, it's been about 8 years.
Because I feel like that's like a definitive part of a water dungeon. I think this one totally is a water dungeon. I'm not debating that. But I do remember it feeling like half a water dungeon.
Yeah, I don't remember if it goes up or down.
I think there's a lot of water in the forest area with the little cute kikwis.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
when that
I
area
think
gets
there's a
flooded
lot-
too.
yeah. I don't know if
So
that
that's
counts as a water dungeon.
not quite a dungeon, but it's like a water level of some
Yeah.
kind. I do remember that.
Skyward Sword with the that's also in that one when you start flying your bug around, isn't that right? Or is that a different dungeon? You have to take the bug and oh no, I think that's a different one.
I think
That's
that's,
like
the
the spirit.
desert or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I'm confusing it.
Yeah.
So in Skyward Sword, a lot of the dungeons have like a hub room with a big thing in the middle.
Yep.
And sometimes I accidentally blur them together. I apologize.
It happens.
You're going to need to leave, David.
What's that?
You're going to need to leave.
I'll see myself
We
out.
are dropping
I'll see myself
podcast hosts like flies here.
Lizzie, how do you recall much for the Skyward Sword Water Dungeon?
No, I don't, because I didn't play that game either.
You were being
so
suspiciously
sorry,
quiet over
we
there.
are just like 0 for 2 for the ones we started with. I swear I played the games.
Well, we got
Not those.
old school game, Lizzie,
Right.
and
So I will
new
also
school
leave
game,
again.
Kate here. So
Yeah, I just pulled up a picture to refresh my memory. I don't know if you fly the bird around, but it definitely has the puzzle with the statue going up and down, and you have to solve that puzzle, which is very reminiscent of like up and down puzzles from Ocarina and other things.
just
Yeah,
in a different way.
definitely.
And then we've had another episode where I talk about how much I love that boss too. Again, so this kind of comes back to the water temple or water dungeon. I keep saying temple. Has a really cool boss often, and Galactos is like my jam. It's really interesting. Just a totally different way. I mean, yes, okay, he has a thing that he's protecting that you have to stab. Fine, that's kind of similar. But before you get to that point, he has all the crazy arms, and then even the mini boss, which is the stall master, is like the skeleton with like the 4 arms. So that's a theme, I guess, too, is just having all the limbs. And I always like that boss too, because I find those like Stalfos or whatever iteration they are in a game are often more challenging beasts to battle. So I like those. I like the challenge. I like the sword fighting aspect of it. So those are ones that I like. So,
I
yeah,
feel like we should ask Lizzie which water dungeon we should do next.
Yes, Lizzie. What do you want to talk about?
I mean,
Did you see her face?
I can just because I was trying to see what you get in the Skyward Sword temple
right.
to just be like, is it still kind of like the hook shot, a claw shot thing? So, but then I heard my name and I was like, now's my time.
Come back to us, Lizzie.
You know, I can discuss the swamp palaces in A Link to the Past.
Let's do it.
And Link Between Worlds.
Yeah.
Right? Have you played either of those games?
Yeah.
Okay, so Celeste and I will have a conversation.
Please, yep.
Dave and I are going to leave briefly. All right, carry on.
Tell us about the Swamp Palace.
But so this one is definitely like, this is to me a no sweat type of water dungeon, and I think if anything you kind of sweat because you have to go back to the light world to drain the temple in like the area where you find in light world, so that you actually flood it so you can enter the dungeon in
That
the
sounds
dark
cool.
world.
I do remember that. I remember after you let the water dry up, I remember seeing little fish flopping around.
Yep.
Oh,
in the
no.
light world.
Cool. I'm
Yeah.
sure in the Super Nintendo days that was a really nice detail.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Very.
I feel
Very
bad
busy.
for them.
I know. I did feel really bad for the fish. I was actually trying to see if I could pick it up and bring it
No.
Can you not?
a lake. I don't think so.
Okay, I promise.
But yeah, so there is still the mechanic of you can, drain a room, but like the draining, it may go to different rooms, but it's not as intensive as say the Water Temple and Ocarina of Time. But I just felt like it was because you see the water level drain and it kind of really only affects the room you're in, and so you're able to maneuver around the temple a lot easier. And I do remember really liking the boss too. I don't remember the name, but it's like this floating jellyfish with like other little things around it, so you have to use the hook shot to peel it away and kill the things that are
Attached to it.
attached to
Yeah.
it. So, and it's again really similar in Link Between Worlds as well. You still have to go to right back to Hyrule to drain it, and then go to Lowrule. So anyway,
So A Link to the Past famously is the only Zelda game, 2D Zelda game, that every frame, every screen has 2 layers of dimensionality. And I noticed, I'll full disclosure, I just Googled some of the images of this temple real quick, and I noticed that there's images where water's filling, you could say, the bottom layer and not the top.
Right.
Can you swim through that water in that dungeon, or does it basically block you off?
no, it'll block you. So
Yeah.
you'll have to drain the room to be able to go through that doorway.
Ooh.
Well, that is cool that
What
even for a
another
2D
level.
game, you're dealing with different degrees,
Right,
different depths.
Exactly. Yes. And that's where I mean, like, it's much more contained to a single room, whereas in Ocarina of Time in that water temple, like, you have to go to other rooms if you can access them and see
Right.
how changing the water levels affects what you can do in the room, whereas
Right.
again in Link to the Past and the Swamp Palace and Link Between Worlds, it's like, it's very like room to room, like it's specific to the room you're in, what you can then do or not do.
Yeah.
Now, I have not yet gotten the hook shot in A Link to the Past, but I think you can get it. Do you get it in the water dungeon, like happens in the 3D ones?
Let me refer to the internet.
Do you recall Celeste at all?
I don't remember. To be honest,
I
the
think
water
you
temples
do.
in those games, I don't. I guess they didn't leave a huge impression on me
Yeah.
as much as some of the other.
It didn't really. Well, it wasn't really defined until Ocarina, so we're almost
Yeah.
going back into
Yeah.
retro time here for that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you do because you use that in the boss to defeat it, and right, you know.
Oh, you probably
usually-
pull the little guys away or pull the eyeball out.
Yeah.
There's always got to be an eyeball, right?
There's always an
gosh.
eyeball in Zelda.
Well, it's just
What should I do?
so
Go for the eyeball.
detailed. Sorry, it just
It has 10
so
of them. Go for the
much
big eyeball.
Scrolling. Thank you, Zelda.
Does it have a giant eyeball on its back? Hit that.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, you get the. Yes, you get the hook shot. Was that worth it?
Yay!
Again,
We
I
figured it
thought
out. Our listeners were just screaming in their cars
They
for
were-
like 20 seconds. They're like,
What is she
yes,
gonna
you do. Yes, you do. Go!
She goes, okay, let's see it. Yep, you do.
Great. So obviously that's another theme.
Oh,
We
my
get. I feel like
goodness, my
I'm
goodness.
building a thesis or something, so I can put my like the three things that all of these have in common, like the water level changing and the hook shot or claw
Yeah,
shot
right.
and cool boss. That's
Yeah.
Cool boss.
subjective, but
I go for, is there a dimensional puzzle? Like, do you have to think
Sure.
three-dimensionally? It seems like you have to do that a lot of
Yeah.
times in water dungeons because you can.
Yeah.
You know? Minish Cap has one where you're in the air and there's a little bit of air puzzles, but it's different, isn't it? Let's do Minish Cap because that has one that I think is kind of debatable if it's a water dungeon or
Oh,
not.
yes, we'll have a very interesting argument.
Oh.
Blood will be drawn. No, I don't.
Oh, wow.
So
getting
yeah, that
nervous.
would be the Temple of Droplets. Am I right?
I would feel so, yes.
Yeah.
It's also very frozen, but I think
yes.
it's a water
Mhm.
dungeon.
You know, ice is, or rather was, water. And will be again,
Whoa, whoa,
probably.
whoa, 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 whoa. Run this
Am
by
I
me again.
blowing your
Let me
mind?
check the internet.
Yeah. And then
Lizzie has
20
to
minutes
go.
later, 20 minutes later, our producer just left. 20 minutes later. Yeah, it is. It's water.
I just finally come up for air.
I
Yes, confirmed.
I can verify that ice is and was and
Mhm.
will be water. So yeah, the reason I had this one written down is because of like the pushing the lily pad with
Mhm.
your gust jar and
Oh,
it's water.
yes.
They're
Yeah.
traveling
Water.
by water,
Yes.
but within the dungeon itself. So I'm like, I say that counts. And then plus, obviously, the ice. The whole point of it is to be melting the ice. So I figure that kind of counts too. So you're trying to melt things that are frozen chests, I think keys,
Mhm.
enemies, pretty much everything.
Yep.
So I remember liking this one.
There's a little
It's
bit of
different.
dimensionality. Yeah, I was fine with this one too. I also remember when I first played Minish Cap and was playing this dungeon, it wasn't until about halfway through where I thought to myself, literally, I was like, oh, am I in a water dungeon right now? I was like, am I missing something? Do I got to start
Right.
paying attention to more things?
Did you have to check yourself before you wrecked yourself?
I did indeed wreck myself after I checked myself.
I thought
Um,
that one was interesting too because you go in and you're like, oh, isn't the
Oh, yeah,
boss
that's
key
a
right
cool
there
one.
or something?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, it's right. Oh no!
It's
Yeah,
too
of course I can't get to it.
easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, you see the boss door pretty
Boss
much
door.
right away.
And the giant enemy too. You're just like, oh no, it's fine. He's fine.
Which is not really a water-based enemy, though, if I remember correctly. Isn't the enemy the big Deku scrub? Oh my goodness!
It's like an octo.
You're right.
Blah, 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 blah,
Mhm.
Whatever. It is.
Mhm.
Mm.
When's the last time you played Minish Cap, Celeste?
I actually played it about last year.
Ooh, cool.
I haven't beaten it yet, but when I think of water in that game, I vaguely remember the Temple of Droplets, but I also remember the swampy area
Mm.
where you have to shrink a bunch and there are thorns.
That's
I
true.
think it's to the
Yeah.
southwest of
Yeah.
the map.
You're right.
I remember that.
It's the only area we go on those angled bridges, too, isn't
Yes.
that right? Which is
Yes.
cool. It's first in
Oh
the Zelda game.
yeah, I remember that too.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's a really fun one. I love the mechanic of having to shrink,
Yeah.
and then if it's raining, the droplets are.
Oh yeah.
Dangerous and
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. very
Yeah, that was
dangerous.
cool. That was cool. Yeah, I don't know if there's a definitive water dungeon in Minish Cap then, but I think the wettest one is definitely
The,
Right.
the
Droplets.
waterest
the
one.
most
Water-
wateristy.
I feel like we're just waiting to talk about Ocarina of Time because nothing seems to
We
be
might
able
be
to
headed there.
We'll get there.
Chomping
We
at
might
it.
be headed there, but let me let's just see here.
We should talk about the Tower of the Gods in Wind Waker
Oh, yeah.
first.
Oh, yeah,
Because we were talking obviously about that water going up and down, and this is one where you have no control over that. It just happens.
Yeah, that was such a cool way to do it.
I kind of prefer that I cannot control it. Like it just happens. So it's more of a timing thing than like, I don't know, water physics kind of thing.
Yeah, you're definitely dealing with water depth right off the bat. I feel that the Temple of the Gods is definitely the Wind Waker's secret water dungeon. You're in a boat. I mean, it also sneaks up on you a little bit because you first get started and you're just going in with your boat. And you're like, whatever, and you realize, oh no, I'm unlocking doors. I'm in a dungeon. I'm in a full thing, and you still get to use your boat, which is cool.
Yeah.
Which, if there's going to be a game with a boat, at least it's not like you had to like jump off your Yoshi before your Mario castle or something. You know what I mean?
You don't have to sacrifice your boat.
No,
Don't have to. No, not at all.
you can involve the King of Red Lions.
Lizzie, how did you interpret the water changing? For me, I interpreted it as like, oh, it's evoking that it's like the waves of the ocean still affecting it.
Yes, I agree with that, especially because you get to still have your boat, and I feel like that's why they would have kept that in there. So for sure.
I remember being a little intimidated. What were your thoughts when you first got into Water Dungeon or Temple of the Gods, Celeste?
I thought, oh my goodness, am I closer to Hyrule Castle? What's going on?
What'd you say?
Am I closer to Hyrule Castle? But is Hyrule Castle considered a water dungeon since it's beneath the water, since it's beneath the Great Sea?
I was a little bubble of air. We spoke about the Hyrule Castle as in our non-dungeon dungeons episode 2 episodes ago, which is just coming out as of this recording. And I think we would not consider water, but I think it's a fair point. The fact that you're dealing with the water going up and down and dealing with those dynamics, because you actually, isn't there a little bit of fire too? Like the fire stops being lit if the water goes up above it too much.
Yeah.
You're lighting torches and
remember
stuff
that.
too in a certain amount of time, which is kind of cool.
And I think it's the one with the logs with spikes, and you have to watch the water levels. I think they had that in a few Zelda games, but I think in Wind Waker they have it as well.
Ocarina has water that goes up and down with a button, and there's a log spike to go under. But you're right, in the Wind Waker.
Ride the little platform.
Do you have any other notes on this one?
Not too much. It's just also where you move a lot of the statues. That doesn't really have to do with water, but it's just another element of it that is kind of out of nowhere and kind of different, where you learn the command melody. That's where you learn that.
You're right.
So that's kind of cool. And then you can control I always like the animation of him I don't know, doing his brain power.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. It is kind of funny.
And,
He's just sitting there.
Ying, and so that's the way you move the statues and the people, and that is a cool part of it. And then also is your first dark nut of the game, which is the enemies that like shed the armor after you hit them. And I was going to mention that just because I also like those, like the Stalfos, they tend to be more of a challenge. I like pretty much anything that I get to go head to head with on like more of a sword fighting type level. Yeah. Like at first I hated the like skeleton pirates in Skyward Sword, but then I eventually really liked them because they were also really challenging. So I don't know, just a cool enemy that you get to encounter in that one.
As we're talking about it, I'm realizing that in Minish Cap, you go into a nice dungeon that kind of becomes a water dungeon. And with this one, I suppose it starts at a water dungeon, but it does kind of not use water dungeon elements once you get inside. That second half there, it's almost more. Reminds me more of the dungeon in Majora's Mask, where you also set all the different statues and move them around. Celeste is nodding. I don't remember which dungeon it is.
I don't remember which one that is either.
It's like not a spirit one, but it's the one where you go to the dead city.
Right, the
Akana Canyon?
Yeah, it could be.
Akana Canyon?
Yeah, I think so.
But you have to make reproductions of Link as his Zora form, his Goron form, his Deku form, his human form.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of cool, Kate. You get this ability to make a statue of yourself, but the real trick is that you realize that if you put a mask on and make a statue, you can actually make 4 statues of each mask you put on. So like if you personify another creature and then you make a statue, then take that one off. And it's really cool.
Cool. One last thing about Tower of the Gods is the boss is awesome yet again. So this is Godan. I am probably not saying that right, but it's the floating head and hands, which as we talked about on our bosses episode, I love those things.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Because they're weird. And, instead of hitting their eyeball, it's like their hands that you have
which sometimes have eyeballs in them in some of the games.
Fine, fair enough. You got to aim at something. But I always love the weird disembodied head and hand. So when I was going through the research for this one and I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, that's where that guy is. Oh, it's like yet another cool water dungeon related boss.
When we did our Wind Waker episode, I remember getting to the boss and being like, okay, it's the head and hands, which sometimes I like, sometimes I don't. I do get why you like them, and I agree with all those points. And so that is nice. But this one was a pleasure to play.
Yeah. And not what you'd expect in like a water dungeon type.
Because they float around a little different. The way that it's more than just like Bongo doing his thing. Like I'm going to slap at you and grab at you. Yeah. It was a cool little strategy.
All over the place.
Absolutely.
Cool. I think it might be that time
Dun, dun, dun.
Let's do it.
Now
Celeste Roberts.
maybe the battle will happen.
When was the first time that you encountered the water temple from Ocarina of Time?
In 1999, when I was 10 years old.
And she went to rehab because of it. That's how that story started to sound.
I was
traumatized.
I used a Nintendo Power. I don't know if it was a Nintendo Power or I think it was their official player's guide. But the way that they would guide you is they were telling a story instead of just don't turn left, go here. It was more along the lines of Link saw this in the room and he decided to shoot an arrow at it.
Fascinating.
It was pretty cool. So
That is cool.
I remember being fascinated that I found Ruto and she was fussing you for leaving your fiance behind for 7 years. So
Yep, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Yep.
So it was 1990, whatever. 10 years old. 10 years old. How about you?
I mean, it would have been the same year, so I would have been 12.
Fair enough.
I mean, like, I played it the moment that game came out. So
I think I did too. So what was the experience like for you, Lizzie, going into that? Because I don't know, a lot of people have complicated emotions about the water temple in Ocarina.
They're
Right.
scarred for life.
And yeah, and I mean, I know that when I first played it, it was so frustrating and like, I mean, yes, there was the internet, but you couldn't really go to the internet like you can today. So try
You had to
figure it
first
out.
hear,
Yeah,
and then you'd click a button and
I
then
had to
wait
make
for the
sure that I
page.
could, actually dial in. But yeah, like, it's just so interesting to look back because you played it so differently then. Like, you really have to just you just have to keep going room to room, going back, retracing steps because you just and right as a kid you kind of have all the time in the world, so you can just spend all this time on it, which maybe is also what elevated your stress levels probably because you just kept focusing on it because you're like, no, I'm so close, or I'm gonna try that,
And your memory's maybe not so good, so you're like, I don't remember where it came from and where I've already been and where I need to go.
Then I went back and played it like a month ago, and I was more frustrated with the forest temple than I was the water temple.
Yep, same.
So, Lizzie, on
Yeah.
our Ocarina episode, Kate and I felt exactly the same. We almost enjoyed the water temple this time.
Yeah.
And the forest temple, I got stuck hard on the
I got
forest
stuck
temple.
too.
So
it was too dark and my old
It
lady eyes couldn't see anything.
I think it was the same for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, and to go back to your original question,
Yeah.
I know I struggled with it and it was such a pain. And right, like even just Googling water temple, it's like there are just so many think pieces out there about like, why do we all hate the water temple?
Yes.
And-
when I found the same thing.
Yeah.
I had a
Is the water
theory.
temple the worst thing ever in the history of time? Yes.
I had a theory that it hit gaming culture at a time when our brains weren't used to or trained or ready to really truly think three-dimensionally yet.
Mhm.
And that's definitely a three-dimensional puzzle, more so than anything. There's three-dimensionality in Forest Temple if you control how you fall and stuff like that.
Yep.
But this was the first time where the puzzle was 3D. And maybe it's a broad statement, but it's definitely the first time where it really was the main part. And I do feel that one thing that the water dungeon does well is so you move the water by playing the ocarina by these little icons, right?
Zelda
And so-
Lullaby.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not obvious that that's what you're supposed to do there. Maybe you see the little green fairy, so you try a few things. But once you figure it out, I really liked that it wasn't just like the on-off switch. It's like not hit the sword with the on-off switch, moves the water up and down. It was vague enough that if you were just running by, you still had to look at the environment is what I'm trying to say. But it also, once you started figuring certain parts out about the water dungeon, those parts became very clear. And then you could start using them as tools. You know what I
Just a
mean?
reminder,
Yep.
there's a tournament at 3 o'clock.
Move this whole tight.
Game room, Twin Cobra.
Hey, we're live.
Free tournament, 3 o'clock.
TurboGrafx tournament.
20 minutes. You can go to the game room and sign up. Thank you.
Oh, I gotta go, you guys.
Oh,
Sorry, so
TurboGrafx.
Yeah.
Kate might have read this as well because I think she was researching on the Wikipedia page as well. But Eiji Aonuma created it after his love of diving.
Oh.
Eiji Aonuma did?
He,
In the Ocarina of Time one.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So it makes sense now when you think about it. Lots
Interesting.
of diving.
He was because he was on Ocarina as a designer. It wasn't until Majora's Mask when he was the lead designer. So he probably had If you think about Majora's Mask, a lot of Majora's Mask works like the Water Dungeon in Ocarina, where it is these contextual and layered and nuanced puzzles.
Yep.
And now that I think about it, now that you said that, it absolutely evokes diving. How you're falling slowly, you're going up.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Oh man, that is cool to know.
I kind of wish I had played this one on the remake when the boots became not having to pause the game, put them on, pause the game, take them off,
Yeah.
pause the game, put them on. Because that was, I felt like even though it took 1 second or 2 seconds, I was wasting so much of my life doing
hear
this
ya.
thing.
And if you just get the button just wrong, it's like it's 3 or
Yep.
4 button
Yep.
presses to make one thing change. They obviously understood that with the remake.
Right.
Mhm.
And I wish I had played it then. But I just always remember by the time you get to like the 3rd water level change where you're up high, that was the part that I always got stuck at. I was changing it then, and I feel like I was always missing one key or missing something. And there were definitely times where I'd be like, I'm doing great. Everything's going fine. This is going so much faster than usual. Dang it, there's a locked door and I don't have a key right now.
Yeah, it's like, what did I miss 20 minutes ago?
And now I have to start. You kind of have to start all over,
Retracing your steps.
retracing
Yeah.
the steps
Because
from the
you missed
beginning.
Right.
That's
So
a
it's,
pain.
yeah, it's not like maybe I should go to the 2nd water level change. I don't know if that will help though, so I might as well
Mhm.
just start from square one. Like there were times when I would go back to the entrance, not go out, but then
Right.
just start
Yeah.
all over.
Yes.
Yeah, I did that a few times even on our recent playthrough.
Yeah, I probably had to do that like once.
Then
or
again,
twice.
I was very lost because I could only breathe for a minute at a time. But
I have to say,
halfway
yeah.
through playing the water dungeon on our playthrough, I figured out that I needed the tunic or whatever, the scale or whatever it was.
This might help.
Because you know what
Yes,
happened?
yeah.
For me to go to that water dungeon, I finished up. I went over to where Jabu Jabu's now gone or whatever. Ice cavern essentially. And I got done with that, and I was like, "All right, lickety split, let's go on down to the water dungeon." And I warped there, or water temple, and I warped there, and I totally missed a couple of those, not side quests, but those things you had to do. And so when I got into the water dungeon halfway through, I was like, "What did I not do? What did I do?" And so then I had to retrace outside of the dungeon. I retraced all the way back to where Jabu Jabu would be, and instead of warping out of his little zone, I walked back into Zora's domain, and there, King
The frozen
Zora
king, yeah.
wanted
Yeah.
to talk to me.
Right.
That's all it took. I
You
just had to
can't
talk to
avoid
him.
him.
Yes.
I was always wondering what happened.
I
to
love that. I
Jabu
can't
Jabu?
avoid him. He's just always around. It's like he's following
And it
me.
takes about 5 years to scoot over with his
Right.
weird little
Yeah.
noise.
But you're
What's
right. What
creating
did
that noise?
happen with
Jabu Jabu?
where'd he go?
I always thought Jabu Jabu
he
was like
die?
celestial-esque in that he came to not be
Mhm.
corporal or something like that.
They ate
You were
him.
taking
I was going to say they got
They-
hungry.
dive.
They ate
Yeah.
him. They got hungry.
They ate him.
Yeah.
I
We're
just
sorry,
assumed he
Jabu.
passed away or something. I thought he'd be in the water temple.
Oh, that would have been kind of cool.
Mhm.
They wanted sushi. So
They ate their own people.
it's fine.
I don't know if Jabu Jabu. Well, anyway, yeah. All right. Anyway,
We should talk about Dark Link and that
Oh.
whole
yes,
thing.
definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
definitely
Because that
Mhm.
is maybe the one thing that's redeemable about the water temple.
Super
If you
cool.
hate it a lot, I think everyone can agree that part is super freaking cool.
It is.
Just the going into that room in general, immediately you're like, ooh, what is this?
Right.
Where
Yeah.
am I? Can I just run forever? You can't, but it looks like you can. And then
Well, you get the reflection right off the bat. I mean, it looks cool.
yeah. And then
It's
all of a sudden there is no reflection. And then you have the horror movie turn around and there's something behind you.
Right.
That's awesome.
And I've had a lot of difficulty with Dark Link, but not every time. I don't know how y'all's experience fighting him have been. Do you have like a certain strategy? Because there are different things that you can do to kick his butt. So what do you prefer
Yeah,
to do?
I felt that. I think it was much harder for me as an adult. And I think for me, I finally started being able to get hits when I stopped using Z targeting on Dark
yes,
Link.
Fascinating.
that is one strategy.
Yes.
I just remember spinning,
Oh,
You just run around him a lot.
Mhm.
doing the
I think that's what I
spin.
would do.
Yeah,
Yes.
The spin attack.
Spin
Oh,
attack.
spin
I
attack.
remember
Yeah.
for some reason that sticks out as the strategy to beat him, from what I remember.
Right.
I often went the cheaters route and just used Din's Fire 5,000 times.
Oh,
Or as many
yeah.
I
times
definitely used in fire on him when I was a kid.
as humanly possible.
Mhm.
Set you on fire, set you on fire, set you on fire, set you on fire.
I love the aesthetic of that room, and this might be a deep dive, as you guys call it, but
Let's do it.
I was doing research. You said deep dive.
Is this Midwestern
we
thing?
came up with that phrase.
You said it on the podcast.
Tell me more of
before.
these deep dives.
What is a deep dive?
Well, I was researching for an upcoming blog post that I'm doing, and I came across a blog called The Architecture of Zelda by Talbot Hook. And he thoroughly explains the different Asian influences of the water temple. It's absolutely beautiful and fascinating,
Interesting.
very
Wow.
philosophical. And I love that room where you fight Dark Link. It's so stark. I kind of think about, what is the symbolism of this room? Does Link feel alone in the world right now? Is he his greatest obstacle at the moment? His doubts? Is he
Right.
lonely?
Right.
I would
Yeah.
I would concur with those statements. I think that is a celestial room, and that if it's not, it doesn't exist in the same physical space as the water dungeon. You know what I mean? Clearly, it's an emotional room.
That lone tree. Why is there this lone tree?
That's an IGN Numa thing, because at the end of Majora's Mask, there's that there's the little boy by the lone tree who doesn't have any friends. Oh,
I know.
It me.
Deku tree.
this is the beginning. This is the beginning of like IGN's influence. That stuff.
It was beautiful.
I think. But that wasn't the first time that Dark Link was introduced to the series. Dark Link is the final boss in the Adventure of Link for the Nintendo. He's actually, you don't actually necessarily fight Ganon. It's a big fight with yourself. There's like kind of a bird thing too, but anyway.
Gosh, we could write a whole book
kind of a
on the
weird thing,
philosophy of these games.
What's that?
Oh yeah.
Write a whole book on the
mythology
philosophy.
and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what about the
Symbolism.
psychology of Zelda?
Oh yeah, aren't you reading that book right now?
And I've got it right there. Anthony Bean is an
And-
editor. He edited that book, and we're hopefully going to be setting up an interview with him. In a
And
couple
Dark Link
episodes.
is definitely part of that book. I already saw it. I haven't.
yeah?
I'm going to read it after this. But yeah, he's definitely a topic about exactly what you're talking about. So I'm excited to read what he thinks about that.
There is a book called The Philosophy of Zelda as well.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's another one to
Yep.
check out.
Read
Yep.
all the things. But then,
the
yeah,
books.
and then after you beat him, it just becomes this gloomy kind of normal place. And it just, even as a kid, I remember being like, whoa, that was different. Like, I've never seen something like that before.
Yeah, the life comes out of the room a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Comes back down, and you're like, I did a good thing or I did a bad thing. Oh, because you're wrestling with your own demons, so maybe you do
Right.
have mixed emotions about it. So the room goes into a gray,
Mm-hmm.
but it's cool.
Weird.
Almost like taking all the distractions away too. It's like you literally can only face your fears. You know, it's like
Okay,
there's
I like
no.
that.
Yeah.
That's
I like
deep,
that a lot.
Lizzie.
Yeah.
I like
totally.
that. So we have Dark Link. That's essentially the mid boss, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And then I remember the room with all the vortexes and stuff where it's like a
Yes.
weird tunnel hallway vortex thing. I remember that part was super frustrating because I would always get sucked into them. It was weird and creepy, I think, because of that reason too. Like, why are these here and where are those vortexes going? Where am I going when I go into them?
Right.
And then at that point, I also always knew I was toward the end. So I was like, oh, thank God. I'm in the
Oh.
vortex room. As
Yep.
frustrating as this room is, I'm almost done.
Mhm.
So it was,
I might be misremembering, but don't you have to then, as you're going through, at one point try to actually get into one of them to take you someplace? I might be misremembering this from the Majora's Mask.
I
Water Dungeon.
mean, I wasn't
Mm.
trying to get into any of those
Okay.
things.
All right.
Yeah.
No
But you
problem.
have to like go on these teeny little ledges, and if you take one step to the right, you are sucked right down in
And,
there.
and that's different from the room where you have to use the hook shot on the falling levels on the waterfall.
Yeah.
That's cool
Yep.
too, though.
Yeah.
That
one.
part
I, don't know, I
liked a lot.
enjoyed that. You feel like you're Spider-Man. You know, it's great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There are a lot of cool rooms in that place, and I do like that you could revisit them more than once. You'd go in there and be like, okay, I can't reach that target just yet, so I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to come back here later at some point. Like, it's not just a single use only kind of room. You'd have to go back over and over, and I don't mind that. The whole water level changing part was more frustrating, and like when I could go back, but I appreciate
My
it.
big thing the first couple times I would play the Water Dungeon is that obviously, as everyone did, they probably played Super Mario 64 within a year or two of this same experience. And Super Mario 64 does have that one level where the water goes up and down as well.
Right.
You hit the little diamonds and the water goes up and down.
Oh yeah.
And there's always that one secret diamond that's way super high up in Mario 64. And to get one of the stars, you have to activate that trigger. So sometimes I would be playing the water dungeon in Zelda and I'd accidentally think there was one more trigger point than there was. And I'd get the top one and I'd be like, no, I didn't get it all. There's one higher. There's some crazy thing. That always threw me off. End of story.
Okay.
End of my cool story.
The end. And so this one you get the long shot, which is obviously similar to what we were talking about
Right.
with other temples. And it's like, okay, it's the long shot, fine. It's just an enhancement of something that's already cool. So it's not something new, and I think that's a bummer about that temple in
And I
particular.
think that's what also makes the water temple difficult because, right, you get to those little, they look like bullseyes,
Yeah.
and there's so many you get to, and you you can see the red dot, but it doesn't reach, and so
You're
right, and before right, like when you go back and replay it, or maybe you don't remember, but you're kind of like, oh, I guess I just can't get there. But I do remember as a kid playing it, being like, but like I'm doing the thing. Why isn't it doing the thing that it's supposed to be doing? And because right at that point you don't know what you're getting, so you're kind of like, I know that there were so many that I stood and I was like, am I not at the right angle? Like, and I think that's part of the thing that makes it difficult until you get the long shot, and then you can finally put two and two together of like, oh, I can finally reach those things, I guess.
Until then, I'm just going to stand here and try it 50,000 times.
Right. But I do agree with you that it's kind of like it's like, just give me the long shot from the beginning. Just give me a long hook shot, you know?
But I agree with you, or I see what you're saying, but getting that long hook shot recontextualizes the entire dungeon all over again then.
True.
I think it's probably very frustrating. It's frustrating to not be able to reach them and then to just get a long shot and you're like, oh, I can reach them now. I think emotionally that's not super rewarding, but from the puzzle it takes the entire water dungeon, you have to think about it new all over again. But also that could be frustrating too, you know, especially when you're going into a game like this. It's 1997 or 8 or 9 or whatever it is. You're a kid and you don't even know what the language of what you can and can't do is yet. And like you just said, am I just not close enough? Can I cheese it and get right on the edge of a pixel or a polygon? And so I can see how that would be frustrating. But I will stick up for the long shot in one way, in that it does recontextualize the dungeon once you get it, even though it is just an upgrade.
Yes.
Fine, Dave. Fine. See, I knew we'd have an argument.
Man,
I quit this podcast.
That was crazy.
Well, and just to your point about how you brought up, right, it's this newer era of getting used to thinking in 3D. I think that's also what makes it difficult because, right, the 2D map isn't all that useful because it's this different mechanic where it's 3D or there's rooms that aren't connected to anything, but it's like you see them on the different levels, but you're like, oh God, I haven't been there, but how do I get there?
Yeah.
You're right.
Like you almost get to the point where like, do I need to draw out the map on vellum and then like layer it so that I can see where things connect?
It's true.
I mean, that is also a hard thing to try to contextualize and like understand. Like, I know I'm missing this room. How in the heck do I get to this room? You know,
because a column or a chimney or whatever just shows as a room. And you have to even learn that language.
Yes.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Gosh, when you reach the final boss, Morphe, you feel like you've conquered the dungeon, and then you think, oh, I still have to fight something.
Yes.
Oh man,
Yes.
that was a cool boss fight.
That's super different.
Super different.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's where the hook shot works with you and against you, because once you fire the hook shot, it can only go in one direction. So if you have the wrong angle, you miss.
Yeah, you're trying to get his nucleus
right
in this water body.
And so you either need to not
you.
Z-target and lead, or Z-target and just get the angle just right. I think that was a lot of fun, that one.
Usually went with the ladder. I would just kind of keep shooting it off until I finally got
it. I'll get it. And then when he does grab you,
yeah,
like
a lot of
lasso.
damage.
it's freaky.
Yeah.
And he slams you down. It's like almost half damage, isn't it? If I remember, I mean, it feels like
it's
it.
big.
It feels like you can only take 2 of those.
Yeah, I always liked the beginning animation too, where it's like coming from, I think, the boss's perspective, and it's like floating up, and you're seeing it, and then you come up behind Link, and then he turns around yet again because things just like to scare him from behind him. He's like, whoa.
That happens in Majora's Mask too.
Yeah.
Fish. Boss.
The fish does it too. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we move on
Let's do it.
to
Want to do Majora's Mask? Water dungeon?
I know nothing about it, so.
I didn't even intend for it to happen.
I just said, what a great segue. Before we dance right into
have
Majora's
anything
Mask.
else to say about Ocarina of
Okay.
Time?
Ocarina of Time Water Dungeon.
If you could give it a grade of like how you enjoyed it the first time you played and how you enjoy it now, what would it be?
Okay, I'll go
Like,
first.
so A would be like, this is the best dungeon ever, I love it,
I
and
love
F
it.
would be like, I never want to do this again.
Never want to do it again. A is I can't wait to do it again.
Yes.
My memory of playing the water dungeon for the first time was I didn't know that I didn't like it almost until the end. You got done with it, and I was like, oh boy, that was a thing. You know what I mean? But while you're in it, you're just kind of in it. You're figuring things out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the first time I played it, honestly, for me, I feel like it was a C. And I'll say that because I remember when people started getting really frustrated about the water dungeon 10 years ago. And initially, I mean, I didn't think it was a breeze, but I was kind of like, well, I didn't really mind that one too much. I think I was excited about the 3D-ness, actually.
Yeah.
I'll admit.
20 years ago, Dave.
What?
20 years ago.
When what? People started complaining about water dungeon?
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Well, I feel like that became popular. It became popular
It's
to complain
that
about.
old. We're that old.
Popular to complain about the water dungeon like 10 years ago, right? No? I don't know if it happened right away. It was more of like almost a
Well, again, until like think pieces became a thing.
That's
So,
true.
yeah, that's when
That's
we
true.
started hearing.
Dave
that.
just doesn't want to think about how that game is 20 years old, which
fine with
I have
it.
issues with sometimes too.
I think it's just a little bit more than 20 now, right?
I think it
Yeah.
came out in November 1998.
Yeah.
So there it is. Yeah, cool.
So I would have been 11
But I did
when
say
I
10
played
You
it.
can almost
because
drink legally.
I felt like that's when it became popular to not like the water dungeon. I'm not going to stick up for the water dungeon. I get it. But for me, I think it was a C. And the second time I played it, I think it was probably like a B. It didn't improve
Yeah.
much, but it certainly wasn't an A. But I had more respect for it. And I kind of liked it, even with my confusing no tunic thing that happened.
You just wanted to do master mode before master mode was a thing.
My problem when we did our Ocarina review is that I played too quickly. I didn't play fast. My brain kept jumping to instead of allowing myself to play the game, I was like, I know what's
yeah.
next. It's this thing. And then I'd miss something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was so excited to play Ocarina that I played too fast in that way instead of letting the game be. So when we do our Majora's Mask episode, I'm going to just roll through that game and let it affect me.
As much as you can, take your time in that particular
So
game.
believe it or not, even though there's that day timer, that 3-day timer going through the game, take as long as you want.
I still don't believe you. Well, I hated the water temple before it was cool 10 years ago, Dave. So I probably would have given it probably like a D+, honestly. I remember being really frustrated with it and being part of that camp that eventually existed 10 years later
Right.
or whatever. I just like giving you a hard time. I'm sorry.
The Water Temple hipsters. Or
I
something.
I'm president of that club. And now I would probably give it like a B. I don't mind it. I really
Ooh.
don't. And
We both landed on B. That's cool.
yeah, I don't think it's nearly as bad as people kind of give it a hard time for. I did see a poll online of what's the worst water temple, and obviously that was in first place.
Right.
So it's still the most hated, but you know what? I don't hate it that much. I kind of like it. I like the sound effects. I like the music. I like the look of it. Doesn't bother me. I like just being able to walk around. You're never in a hurry there, really. So, and now I don't care about that. I find that enjoyable. Like,
Yeah.
So I'm cool with it. How about you, Celeste?
I would have to say a B as well. I appreciate the aesthetic. I love the music. It's very peaceful. Sometimes I'll play that song in the background while I'm working.
That's
Yeah.
cool. May I interrupt you for a second? When you first played it, did you feel it was a B? Do you like your memory of that first time doing
It
it?
was probably prior to my dropping foul language while playing video games. So I probably hated it, even with the player's guide, because again, if you don't know which door you unlocked or forgot to unlock, it was confusing.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I have to find Rudo. Where did she go?
Oh, interesting.
So I
Oh.
felt like I was on a hide and seek quest almost. But of course, Darunia, he kind of disappeared. So each time I would actually get a chance to meet the, unbeknownst to me at the time, Sage, I was worried about looking for them. Are you going to help me in this temple, or do I have to do this all by myself?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Darunia, if you pay attention, I think he dies pretty quickly. He's kind of like, okay, I'll go ahead. Never to be seen again. It's a little tragic, honestly, if you read between the lines with
Yeah,
Darunia.
shivers.
Rudo does show up towards the end of something. She talks to you a bit, like you said in the beginning
It's
of our
about
episode.
midway when I think it's the first time you play Zelda's Lullaby and she's chastising you for
Oh.
keeping her waiting.
Hey, yep.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yep.
oh, she has earrings now.
And then does she just like...
That's what
She
I
went to Claire's.
Apparently Link did too in 7 years.
I know,
true.
yeah,
That's
double earrings.
Yeah.
Then she just swims away or what? I can't remember.
She swims up.
Maybe she's like, oh yeah, she goes up the
Oh,
chimney.
right.
She's like this. Oh, you kind of follow her. They
She
use her
reverse
to
Santas.
teach you how to
Yes.
go up water.
Yes.
And I was like, am I going to have to carry this girl again? Like you did when
I'm just
you were
so
little.
tired.
She's so
You entered
boss.
the temple tired.
Yeah.
I like it. It's funny. So initial score, just since we're doing it, was
Probably a D, now a
Yeah.
B.
Seems
I'm
to
older
be
and
a common
wiser.
theme.
Much older.
interesting.
wiser.
Lizzie.
I mean, I probably went. It's honestly hard to remember. I feel like it was maybe in a C. It was like, right. It wasn't like the most frustrating thing. Like I
Yeah.
probably got more frustrated losing at Mario Kart. And then, when I went back to replay it, maybe even a B plus. Like I just, it really didn't bother me, but man, did my opinion of Forest Temple just plummet. I can't really put my finger on it, but anyway. So yeah, probably just, I think we're very similar. We all kind of ended up in the B range.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I wonder if other people would agree. I wonder if that's a common theme. So y'all listeners should let us know.
I have
if
felt a
you have a
trend.
similar.
Actually, Chad's checking the comments right now. Because we have comments when we do a live show. Isn't that
That's so
crazy?
cool.
Oh.
Oh, no.
Ooh.
Just kicking my microphone.
Are they like they know nothing about Zelda? They keep forgetting things.
This one. Perfect. Excellent.
We're nailing it.
Just keep that one. Just hang on to that one.
I'm not surprised.
So there's kind of some water dungeon shout-outs in the Oracle of Season and Ages games, which came out right after Ocarina, but not really. Nothing that actually does water up and down. You go to the Zoras, you get the flippers, which is really cool in Oracle of Ages. There's some dimensionality there, but it's essentially a palette swap. There's a dungeon where you're kind of underwater, but I don't remember too much. I might be mistaken now with Ages. I think there's some good water stuff in Ages. But in Seasons, you definitely have a puzzle where you have to drain a lake to switch the seasons. You freeze the lake and then you unfreeze and then it drains and you break something.
The poor fish.
It reminded me of A Link to the Past when you were talking about it.
Yeah.
All those fish. Maybe that's why they decided to evolve into birds.
They're like, I am tired of this treatment.
Why
We had a
does
listener-
Link keep draining the water?
Yeah, right. They're like, we're
Can
done
you just
with this.
not?
We're just gonna fly. We're just gonna fly everywhere. We had a listener feedback where a person said that they always felt that the reason the Zoras, quote unquote, evolved into the Rito, pardon me, even though they're both in Breath of the Wild, is because that was actually an act of the goddesses, so that they couldn't swim and find Hyrule.
Huh.
Maybe.
Whoa.
Kind of cool.
Interesting. Kind of like a Tower of Babel situation.
A little bit.
Prevent
We
you
always
from
joked like,
accessing.
"Oh, hey, water everywhere. Can't swim." But if it was a divine intervention from the three goddesses to evolve them into birds to keep them out of the water, maybe that's the best anybody's going to get.
That would be convenient.
I was always hoping that Zora's Domain would have suddenly become unfrozen after you defeated the water temple. Because doesn't Lake Hylia's water rise back to its normal?
It does. You're right.
level?
It starts to
I thought
rain.
it does. Doesn't it unfreeze after beating?
It starts to rain and the water comes back up.
But
Yeah.
the domain is still frozen. You don't get to hang out with your
Oh.
Zora friends.
I see. Okay.
That was kind of depressing. But I don't remember in that same vein with after you beat the fire temple, are all the Gorons back in Goron City?
I don't
Gosh.
think so.
I'm
they were-
embarrassed to say that I don't know if I
They
never.
were there though.
You never
for-
revisited?
We got like, all
You
right.
didn't go check on your friends?
I'm done with you now.
I mean, they were in Goron City because right before you like even get into the fire temple,
There's
they're there.
the one that's rolling around, but they Ganondorf wanted them all to get eaten to Volvagia,
Oh,
to the dragon. So
yeah. Well, now internet.
I know the internet.
20 minutes later, I'll give you the.
Yeah.
Lizzie's
Sounds
gonna
good,
check the
sounds
internet,
good.
you guys.
Well, let's talk about Great Bay Temple. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I remember the Great Bay Temple. So now I have not played Majora's Mask in a long time. That one's genuinely probably 10 years on me right now, if not more. I remember disparate moments that I really, really enjoyed about it. But I also remember going into it and being like, oh, yes, this is a water temple. Would anybody like to speak to it at all?
It reminds me of Rusty Bucket Bay from Banjo Kazooie.
I agree.
If anyone remembers that,
I love Banjo
I know
Kazooie.
I know this isn't a Banjo Kazooie podcast, but it just reminded me of that with the mechanical aspect.
Yeah.
It reminded me of this industrial town, sort of. It was very depressing. It was very stark. The whole game is depressing.
So this was no exception, apparently.
No, it wasn't as beautiful as Ocarina of Time's temple. But then, is it called a temple? It's called the Great Bay Temple. Huh?
Great Bay Temple,
Yeah, it's called
yeah.
rather
They
than
did
dungeon?
they did a little bit more with the lighting effects where there would be larger blotches of lighting in that temple. But you're right. Other than that, the textures and stuff were not necessarily that shimmeriness that you sometimes get
Yeah.
like in some of the others.
I think when you were talking about the vortexes, Kate, I think as a Zora in your Zora
That's when you have to
form,
go in.
you have to shoot through them and they speed you through.
Little nitros, and if you get enough of them, then you can finally get to another thing. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Of. Yeah. There's a legit part in the Majora's Mask water dungeon where you're just full Zora underwater, kind of moving around.
Yeah, the tunnels. Yeah.
Yep, the tunnels, right?
Or am I confusing that with the
Well, no. Then
level
there's
in
also like the
moon?
little rivers that go all over the place in that one. This
Mm-hmm.
this one I admit is a bit more abstract for me. I don't remember like how it starts or
Yeah.
how it ends.
Same.
Well, this is great conversation about this one. I have not played this one, but I did look this one up at least, and so I learned that there was another gross frog apparently in this one with with
there is.
eggs or eyes or something disgusting. I'm just not a fan of the frog bosses.
It's a little gross, like babies on its back.
Yeah, that or like the
Yeah.
spiders when it
Mm.
comes to eggs.
Oh,
and like,
Goma?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not all about that. I am not all about.
Creepy crawly.
Not a fan.
No.
I wish
no.
some people can see Celeste's face right now, but if you're just listening to this, she just made the best, like, I don't know, stank
Grimace.
face.
Stink eye,
Ooh, I do not like it.
So, and then the boss for this one, I feel like you may have talked about.
I probably did.
On another episode. How do you even pronounce this one? Georg?
Oh,
George.
yeah.
George.
I know. I always thought it was like
George.
Gyrog or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
So can you speak to the
Georg,
Boss
the
for this
fish.
one?
Remember, it keeps
Georg.
jumping out of the water
Yeah,
at you?
yes, that's its name. Yeah. I forgot its name, but I remembered like you said, the first person perspective, Kate. That was really cool how you
Okay.
can see it from the enemy's point of view when he leaps out
Georg
of the
comes
water.
out at you fast. Oh, and then it
Yeah.
freezes up on top, and it's like Georg.
And
or
you have
whatever.
to hit it with your
George.
boomerang fins as the Zora form.
Oh, that's
Mhm.
right. You have to
Right.
jump down in with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So whereas in Ocarina, something was coming up to get you, in Majora, it's swimming around, and you're like, I don't want to go to there.
No, you're trying
But
to
you
get a
have to jump
preemptive
in.
strike
Yeah.
for him.
So
Yeah,
that
that's
sounds
right.
a little different from usual.
Yeah.
Does it have a giant eye that you have to hit?
I think you just have to hit the fish itself.
It has like big
yeah.
fish eyes, but I don't think you have to do anything with
It's
that.
a little different. Sounds a
Yeah.
little unique and interesting.
I remember kind of not wanting to. Is everything okay? Did something just fall?
It's fine. Just
Okay.
my water.
Just your water. Copy that.
It's
Got
very
it.
fitting.
No problem.
Not ice.
Yep, very good. Yeah, so Georg, yeah, it's a bit of an action packed. You run after it. Honestly, a lot of the bosses in Majora's Mask are lightly action packed. Even Goat, you're
Yeah.
rolling and going after him. There's a lot of like little arenas.
That's
I
the
call
one that
that
you like.
game Side Quest the game.
What's that?
I call Majora's Mask Side Quest the game because
Yeah.
it's more about the side quest and the people.
I agree.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one more here. Does anybody have any honorable mentions or anything they can think of?
Well, I was just when I thought of Majora's Mask, I was thinking more about Woodfall and the swamp area,
Oh,
and if that's a water temple. But
Yeah.
anyway, I think it's just more that getting to it is
It's
more
very
watery.
water-based.
yeah.
than
The water,
necessarily-
the swamp tour you can take and take
Yes.
pictures.
Right,
with the
right.
pictograph.
Yeah, I know a little
Like
bit
you're
of
a
Pokemon
tourist.
Snap built
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
in.
Right. Anyway,
Yeah.
It's true. You literally rent a boat and take pictures for people of different things.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty cool.
It-
Yeah.
that part's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once you're in that dungeon with the Deku scrubs, I don't think it's very water based, but a lot of poison water to navigate through the
Yes.
forest and stuff
Yes.
ahead of it. So I don't think it's an honorable mention. I think it's legit. I would include what is it, Varudo as a water dungeon, the elephant.
I was-
yes.
yeah.
from
Can we
Breath of
talk about the
Wild.
elephant?
Oh man, that was an awesome way to get into Varuto when you're fighting alongside Prince Sidon.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that I was terrified at first because these blocks are coming at
Right?
me.
Yeah.
But what do I do? How can I react fast enough? And I have to freeze them?
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of gyro,
Yeah.
gyro on the controller to get those things.
yes.
Gosh.
So also Alex Sheehan's favorite part of Breath of the Wild. He's a guy who's been on the show before. He was just most recently on our Midwest Gaming Classic Saturday episode. That's his favorite part of the whole game is actually the
Really?
Sidon thing to get into Varudo.
Mhm.
Am I saying is it Varudo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Meadow's the bird. Varudo's the elephant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that Varudo's definitely a water dungeon in that you have to use water physics to solve your puzzles, and it is not obvious.
Yep.
So many different orientations of how that trunk can be.
Mhm.
The fact that
Yeah.
you can go on the
Oh,
trunk, the
man.
fact that the trunk in one position makes the wheel spin one way, other position you have to figure out makes it spin the other way. You have to think about how the water falls. I'd say this totally classifies.
I remember being like, I can go on the trunk. I can. It was still in that because that was the first one that I went to in the game. I was still in the mode of I can like climb on everything here,
Right.
like almost everything. I mean, I'm sure I fell off Varudo at one point because I fell off literally everything in Breath of the Wild. Like if there was something, I was gonna fall off of it, and that didn't work out well. But yeah, I just remember being like, oh, I can like explore this whole dang thing.
Yeah, I agree. I almost thought I was breaking the game. I was like, can I go on
Yeah,
this trunk? Am I
allowed?
cheesing this?
Yeah.
And then, you can get clever with how you walk on it while the trunk comes up.
Yes.
And that's when you think, like, am I
Yeah.
breaking the game? But you realize, no, the game is supposed to work this way in that it just works this way.
Mhm.
Lizzie, you must have a lot
Cool.
to say because you're a mechanical engineer, right? So
Yes, I have so much to say about it. No, I mean, it's true. I forgot. I definitely spent so much time trying to climb the trunk and do different things. And honestly, until we were talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, it was this like amazing like dual battle that like even got you onto the beast. It's totally a water temple, and I wasn't even really thinking about it in that way. I mean, of course, right, you're in Zora's domain and all of that, but right, like I was like, oh shoot, is more like, is it like kind of the swamp area in Majora's Mask where it's just like, oh no, you're just around water and then you get to it, but no, it's totally a water
For me, the
dungeon.
fact that you use water physics to solve your puzzles
Yep.
does it for me.
I don't think you can drown in that Zelda, can you? Can you drown?
what?
Can you drown in Breath of the Wild? You can? Okay.
You can if you run out of your stamina.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Right.
that's right. Because I'm thinking you can't sink. There are no iron boots. You can't
Right.
explore the bottom of the water.
Right.
But
No.
you can't. Okay, the stamina. That's
And it's so
true.
odd when I'm in Breath of the Wild and I see these beautiful lake beds, like all this and like design
Like
that went
the
into
flowers
them.
at the
They look-
bottom.
yeah, the big
everywhere.
flowers. Kind of like I want to go check them out.
But you can't.
Maybe
I'm
Breath of the Wild
gonna
too.
die.
What's that?
I'm gonna die if I try to do that. I will bring up my opinion of difference in that I hate Water Blight Ganon as a boss. So
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
I-
I'm not a
that
fan.
was
I'm not
so
including
That was
this
such a hard
one.
fight.
not
I'm not a
including this
fan
one
of
in
Water
the cool
Blight.
bosses
Yes.
of Water Dungeons.
I definitely was looking on the internet for solutions for that entire puzzle,
Uh-huh.
that
And this
entire
is my-
dungeon.
Yeah.
my first one, and I'm like,
yes.
is this whole game gonna be this
I thought
hard?
the same thing. I was like,
You're
oh,
right.
cool.
That
These
was
are
my
the
first one
bosses.
too.
It was mine. Yeah.
Yep.
My first
Most
one.
people,
Yeah,
the game
yeah.
lightly steers you to the Zoras.
It does.
I think
It
it's
does.
Narratively
maybe the
speaking,
closest one too.
I think so. I just remember, Prince Sidon wants me to follow him.
I will.
Right.
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 I will do
Okay.
this.
Yep. He seems to get what he wants. Yeah.
When I played
okay.
the second time through on my master mode, I went straight to the Rito to get the Rivaldi's
Yeah.
Gale or whatever it is. But you had to I had to choose to do it. Most of the game does kind of go like, the Zoras, we get over that way. They just place the camera with that in
And
the
that's
background.
usually not the first temple in a Zora.
That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
a Zelda game.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Right.
You're
Usually
absolutely
it's a
right.
Forest.
Won't make that mistake again. If, once I play through this game again, I am not going there first. No.
Any
thank
favorite water dungeons? Because then we're going to wrap this up. We're a little over an hour right now.
I mean, even though Water Blight Ganon was really hard, I think probably actually Varuda.
Rito.
Yeah.
I remember thoroughly enjoying, albeit with some frustrations, Twilight Princess Water Dungeon, whatever it was called.
I love that one too. I
Yeah.
like just exploring the Lake Helia in that game. It's so beautiful, so
That's
peaceful, so serene. But
That's true.
the Ancient Cistern is really cool.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's
I think I might go with Twilight Princess. As frustrated as I was by that staircase, it was something completely different. And I like what you were saying about how all the different pieces of the different elements, like you're saying, water can only go down, and sometimes there's no water at all, and sometimes you're lifting up the gate to let in more water.
Right.
I think all that put together makes for a really interesting challenge that, though frustrating, it's not frustrating on the same way that the Ocarina of Time one is.
Yeah, I agree.
So I appreciate the challenge more of Lake Bed Temple.
And it's the first one. Maybe it happens in Wind Waker, but little droplets will come off Link. For me, it was the first temple where I felt wet. I guess you know what I mean. You feel it's portrayed very well. Whereas in Wind Waker,
Yeah.
the droplets might come off Link, but they're just these blue triangles or something. You know what
but
where I'm going
you
with this?
actually see wet footprints.
Yeah, you're right.
On the
You're
terrain.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was our discussion about water dungeons. Thank you so much for tuning in and/or listening. We're gonna do all of our little social things real quick. But final thoughts on the Video Game Summit. First time for all three of you to be here.
Yeah.
This is only my second time. It's fun. We're in the exact same spot we were last year. Slightly different setup, slightly bigger setup. We've got a tech gentleman. Chad Helperson over there is our tech guy. It's
Sir
one of-
Tech Gentleman.
Tech gentleman. That's what it says on his. That's what it says in the credits. That's what it's going to be. The tech gentleman. How was it for you, Lizzie?
Fantastic. I mean, everyone's just so kind. There's so many cool things to see here too. Like just games that
Yep.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about that game in years, and I probably do need to buy it. And yeah, it's just you can just tell looking around. Like it's just such a fun. I don't know, just people of all ages, people bringing their kids. Like it's just a really really cool event, and just seeing that the new generation is still loving video games just as much as we all do.
Yeah.
And I'll say, even from when we were here last year, they now have booths all the way out into the lobby. It was mostly this room that we can kind of see here last year, but now around the corner there's booths. And the booth, I was speaking earlier on one of our test live streams with Todd, who is one of the, I guess you could say, founders of the Video Game Summit, and he was saying we probably have to go to a new space next year because we're getting more and more booths. And that's awesome. So maybe we'll find ourselves in a new space next year doing a live show or something like that. I think that'd be cool. Celeste, how has your journey been this week?
Oh, it's awesome. I love Chicago. It's more laid back than New York City. Everybody's very friendly, very helpful. I find that the Video Game Summit's a very good family event, like Lizzie was saying, parents showing their kids, nephews, nieces, these video games that they used to play. And it was nice to come here when Louisiana is about to experience its own water temple or water dungeon.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Luckily, not too dangerous of one.
No,
Right.
no bosses to fight, hopefully.
That's good. No water blight cannon in sight.
No.
Thank
How was
goodness.
it all for you, Kate? Did you have a little anxiety come into this today? I hope not, and I'm so happy you were able to make it.
No, it's been great. I didn't know really what to expect because I haven't been before. So, I got here. I cruised around. I already bought a video Nintendo 64 game, and I'd have to go make another lap here.
I might
So
do
lots
one
of
more
cool
lap
stuff.
myself.
And we got our own trading card.
Oh my gosh, I think it's here. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Chad's gonna hand it to me. Thanks, dude.
Trading card.
Yeah, we got awarded a moment in history.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
We got our own trading card. So now we have our own little card and our own part of Video Game Summit history.
So, Walter Day is here. I had the chance to interview him at the Midwest Gaming Classic on a previous episode. He's a super cool guy. You can check out that interview. And he hinted that maybe we could be a trading card at that event.
Mm-hmm.
And so
He presented
cool.
us with like a poster and a lovely speech about just our podcast, and he was saying we do all these amazing things, which I am very thankful for. And I'm like, are you sure? We're just talking about a video game we really love, but he put it in a whole different perspective, which is that we're recording our own like oral history of the video game and how we feel about it and our experiences of playing it for the first time, and that's important to record. And
it is cool. And Kate, I'm
Share.
grateful that you were able to come this time around, because usually when we're making the show, it's just at your dining room table. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm so happy that you're able to experience it on this larger scale too, and reap the benefits of that as well, because we both put work into the show. And sometimes I get to go out and have all the fun, but I'm so happy that you're able to have the fun today too.
Thanks.
You know what I mean? So let's see. Thank you everybody for listening, or even maybe viewing it right now on our live feed. Lizzie, if people want to find you, they obviously can find some of your blogs that you've written for us on our website. But if they'd like to find you on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that, where are you?
You can find me at Missy Lizzi, MISSILIZZI, on both Instagram and Twitter.
Marvelous. And Celeste, what about you? If people want to chat with you a little bit more about your thoughts on water temples and things like that, or if they even have maybe a few blog posts.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at FairyCrypt, FAERIECRYPT.
Marvelous. Kate.
It's me.
Todd.
I am not on Twitter because I don't get it. So I have Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, and my screen name, I'm going to have to keep it this way for the sake of previous shows that we recorded.
It's
Is
on the card. I'm joking.
it's on the no? Well,
I don't
it's
think
on
it's
the
on the
TV at least, or it was.
Yeah.
Is I only take cat pics. However, I just got a puppy, so now there are also dog pics. But I'm not going to change my name.
So many.
I
asterisks.
only take cat pics, but then also other pics of things and also dogs.
Like running pics and dog pics.
Yep.
And
Beer pics.
beer garden pics.
Yep.
Pretty bad brand.
So many pics.
Okay, you really didn't think that one through. I'm sorry to
I
say.
really did not.
I'm just totally joking. I'm
I'm off brand.
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Raptor Paint. Also on Discord, I'm at Raptor Paint. And if people want to find, all of us are on Discord.
Yeah,
all of us are on the Zelda
I was
Discord,
like,
aren't we?
we're all there too.
Are you Fairy Crypt on Discord? And you're Lizzie Nielsen or
Lizzie.
Missy Lizzie?
Yep.
And
you're
I'm Cater Tot
there. It is.
because I don't like to
Oh,
make
that's
anything
cute.
easy. So yeah, Cater Tot, like tater tot with a K.
So we're always chatting over there, and you can find the show on Instagram by searching Another Zelda Pod. We're on Twitter, Another Zelda Podcast. Swap that. Instagram is Another Zelda Podcast. Twitter is Another Zelda Pod. Go to our website, AnotherZeldaPodcast.com. Find our show on iTunes. Oh, they probably can't see the banner, but iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube, which hopefully that's where you're watching this episode right now. A special thanks to the Video Game Summit for giving us that. I mean, we rented the space, but they were so kind. We were on the corner here, and they gave us a little bit of extra space to do this production, and so a big thank you to them. And we just got a thumbs up from Todd, which is awesome. And last but not least, you can find more information from them. I think it's videogamesummit.net. We're certainly going to come back next year, whether it's in this location or another. And there it is. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for flying
Thank
to
you for
Louisiana. Thank you for
coming.
driving from Madison. Thank you for driving from Milwaukee.
Sure.
Now
Thanks
let's
for living in Chicago.
Dave did
No
nothing.
problem. No problem.
All right, see you guys next
A big
time.
thanks to
Oh,
Chad.
no,
He
my leg.
and I were in Milwaukee yesterday,
All right. That's fine.
trying to set all this stuff up to make it work. He's given us the signal. He's given us the let's finish it signal.
He
All
wants
right.
us to stop talking.
Hey, Kate. I'll see you in a week. Oh,
Okay, bye.
there it is.